Hello, welcome to our Transforming the Office of Finance, Analytics, and Forecasting Automation webinar. Over the next hour, we'll be showcasing how Alteryx and IBM Planning Analytics work together in a few different ways. First, we'll be showing how they can be used together for predictive forecasting. Then, we'll be moving to J.D. Irving's real-life customer story of how they use Alteryx and IBM Planning Analytics, formerly TM1, within their environment together. Couple logistics for the webinar. If you have any questions throughout our session, please feel free to type them into the question and answer section or the chat window. We'll be monitoring it throughout our presentation and addressing them as we go. So a quick round of introductions to the folks presenting to you today. There's myself, Sophie. I'm a senior account manager at Newcomp Analytics. Then we have Aleks, a sales engineer at Alteryx, and Brian, VP of Analytics and Performance Management at Newcomp Analytics, and Doyle Bond, Manager of Finance and Transformation at J.D. Irving. A little bit about Newcomp Analytics for those of you who are not familiar with us or might not be aware of the breadth of our business. We are an end-to-end analytics provider that does software licensing, implementation services, strategic consulting, mentoring, and training for all aspects of analytics architecture and solutioning. So it's everything from analytics strategy to data warehouse development, cloud architecture, data engineering, RPA, and business intelligence development and data science. We work with technology partners that are listed here. This is a top selection of them, which we feel are top tier within the market, and we've seen them be successfully applied within our clients' environments. Today is a great example of how the solutions we work together are often integrated and part of a unified architecture. We'll be showing how IBM Planning Analytics and Alteryx are best together. Within Newcomp, we have 5 main areas of focus. These include AI and machine learning, data engineering, BI and data visualization, financial planning and analytics, and cloud. These days, more often than not, these areas are more like a Venn diagram and they'll overlap and interplay with each other. But these are the key 5 areas where we'll continue to invest in skills and technologies within Newcomp. Within these pillars, we offer development services, advisory work, proposals, training and mentoring, analytics roadmaps, manage analytics, and licensing, which includes selling and supporting licenses, but also providing guidance in different licensing options and ensuring that you're compliant with vendor licensing requirements. A quick overview of IBM Planning Analytics. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's an enterprise planning solution that allows organizations to have a unified planning solution to create plans and forecasts for FP&A, sales, supply chain, and HR, to name a few departments. And it's all within one platform. It allows users to pivot in real time, accelerate decision-making, and drive higher performance while reducing the risk of errors. And today it's going to be Brian Simpson from our team who will be presenting Planning Analytics perspective. And then we have Alteryx, which Aleks will be presenting. Alteryx is a platform that is purpose-built to shorten the distance between business problem to business solution. It is unique in the simple fact that it provides an end-to-end unified analytics experience that empowers all data workers to quickly and easily move back and forth between analytics tasks and, say, discovering the right data sets and collaborating with fellow analysts anywhere across your organization, but still keeping it in a governed way. So you can connect and prep and blend your data, then quickly move into developing an advanced analytics model in a code-free, but also code-friendly environment, leveraging Visualytics to see how your data changes across your entire workflow and not just focusing on the output. Once models are created, they can be deployed into production, then monitored and managed. Today, we're going to be showing how Alteryx models can be deployed consequently with IBM Planning Analytics for production. Alteryx can help automate processes so you can build once and repeat never. And because Alteryx lets you share and publish analytic workflows securely across your organization, it helps break down the analytics silos between different teams, departments, and really go for a unified analytics experience within an organization. So now I'm going to pass it over to Brian. He's going to start off by showing an example in Planning Analytics and then hand it over to Aleks. And then from there, we'll be passing over to Doyle to talk about his experience specifically within JD Irving for Planning Analytics and Alteryx together.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophie. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you guys the beginnings of this Planning Analytics and Alteryx demo working together. Up on my screen, I've got a Planning Analytics dashboard. What we've done is we've imported a whole bunch of transactional data that looks like this into Planning Analytics. There's a whole bunch of transactions in here, all their different data fields. We've taken all of that data and used Planning Analytics to consolidate it into a summary level view of the data. Now, I've got data going back to 2009 in here, all the way up to partway through 2021. If I expand 2021, you can see we've got data right up until April of 2021. And what I want to do is I want to leverage Alteryx to do a predictive forecast on this data to give me another year's worth of data. And you can actually see in my data visualization here, I've got a flat line representing the future, representing the data I don't have. And I'm actually going to leverage Alteryx to do that prediction. The way we're going to manage this is Alteryx is going to use the API, the Planning Analytics REST API, to connect to my Planning Analytics cube in real time. So this is a direct connection. Aleks is going to show you how we make that connection. But I do want to stress it's a real-time connection. We're not using a database as an intermediate step or a CSV file. We're using the API. And after Aleks does his piece, he's going to push the forecast back into Planning Analytics. We'll come back here on this dashboard, and I'll refresh it, and I'll show you that the data's come back in. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Aleks, who's going to show you the Alteryx piece.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian. Appreciate it. So I will start by, let me open this up. Actually, I should share my screen first, which would be helpful. All right, so in just a second, you should be able to see my screen, and here we go. So Brian or someone from the team, we can see everything? We're good?
I can see you. Yep, you're good.
All good.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you. So just as my role was, or my turn was coming up, I was going through the attendees list. I see a lot of familiar names, so get to see familiar faces joining. For those of you who I haven't met, like we said at the start, my name is Aleks. I'm a sales engineer here at Alteryx. And what we'll be looking at for the next 20 to 25 minutes or so will be a demo, a demonstration of Alteryx, what it's capable of, why we're talking about it today, and ultimately how it coexists with IBM Planning Analytics to help you grab data, clean it, manipulate it in a nice, really easy to use, automated way, leverage some super drag and drop code free predictive capabilities, and then push it back up into the final view in Planning Analytics. Now, I can appreciate that some of you are probably looking at Alteryx for the first time, so I'd like to take the first 2 to 3 minutes to walk through a bit of the real estate, some common nomenclature, and just really all get on the same page with what we're looking at here. So I'll start by directing everyone's attention to the top of the page here to what I am going to call the tool palette. Now the tool palette is in kind of an area, it's a piece of the Alteryx platform that consists of about 250 to 300 tools or building blocks, if you will, each of which is drag and drop and code free, with a couple of them being code friendly. And each one of those we are going to be pulling down onto what we call the canvas. Now, recently I heard somebody refer to these tools that we pull down. We typically call them workflows. A combination of these tools is a workflow or a job. Someone affectionately referred to that as analytic artwork. So if you hear me drop that one, we'll be creating some analytical artwork today. And hopefully we'll have a nice masterpiece at the end. At the bottom here, we've got the results window. Now, the results window is going to be important because one thing I'm going to continue to stress as we go through this is that with every step of our data ingestion, transformation, prediction, and ultimately output, we're going to see every step of the way and really get real granular insight into how this data is transforming as we go, which is something that it's a process, frankly, that's lost a lot of the time when we're going through and doing things manually. We're doing them repetitively, and there isn't really a scalable, automated, and enterprise-grade solution for analytics. Finally, I'm running out of colors here. I think we'll go with green. On the left-hand side, you'll see what we call the configuration window. Now, the configuration window will help us configure the different tools. So I'm sure you can appreciate that maybe a formula tool has a different configuration than a filter tool. So as we drag those here one at a time, we're going to build our workflow, and we're going to see all those configurations happening one at a time on the left-hand side of the screen here. Any questions right off the bat on anything we've seen, nomenclature, real estate? Are we good to keep going? All right, we'll keep trooping along. So as with any process, before we start crunching numbers and analyzing and cleaning, we need to pull in some data. We need to open it up. And within Alteryx, we really have quite a I'll call it a data agnostic approach to the ingestion and the output of data as well. So what I mean by that is, and you watch me here, I really just grabbed this one input data tool. I pulled it down, I dragged it from the tool palette onto the canvas. And if I take a look at some of the items that we can connect to, you'll notice that I've got a whole array here of supported file types. Usually the most common ones we see are Excel, CSV, text files are quite popular if anyone's doing any sort of geospatial analysis. We'll see KML files, for instance, and so on and so forth, Esri files. Now, sometimes there are file types that you may not see here on the list. And a few months back, so probably end of last year, I was working with the team that had a proprietary file type, and in fact, we were actually able to construct a workflow to convert it into something you see on this list, and then pull it in. So even if there's a kind of a file type you work with that you don't see, it doesn't mean that we can't use it. Arguably, more powerfully, is the fact that we can also connect agnostically to data sources. So anything, your typical SQL or Oracle servers, anything that's living on-prem, stuff that's proprietary, anything with a generic ODBC connection, various items up in the cloud, Azure, Amazon, GCP, and so on and so forth. I could sit here all day. But most importantly, what we're here to talk about is the fact that we can also connect a planning analytics. Now, you may not see it on this list, and the reason you don't see it on this list, but we can still connect it, is because, as Brian mentioned earlier, we're actually going to be leveraging API calls within Alteryx. So beyond connecting to flat files and to databases, we're also able to connect to data sources via API calls. Now, there are a few ways to do this. Without getting too technically in the weeds, we can take that offline if some are curious. We can make these API calls through Python code. We've got kind of an API tool that replicates a Postman call. We've got, we can run commands if you have a batch file that's doing this, and so on and so forth. But the last thing I wanted to do was to show you a platform that's easy to use, that's drag and drop, that's code free, and say, hey, let's start looking at some Python code. So what we did was actually sat down and said, well, we're making this API call, but why don't we package this up in a really nice, easy to use tool that we can share? If I start typing IBM, you'll notice that I've got this IBM PA or IBM Planning Analytics input tool that I've actually created, and that I'm more than happy to share. You'll notice that if I now drag it from here and drag it down onto my canvas, what I'm going to do is I'll begin by pulling in my information from one of my cubes. And what I need to do is provide information for the server address, the port, the cube name, and finally the view name. Now, there's also username and password component. In this case, I've actually just baked it into here, which is why you don't see them. I didn't really want to share those in a public forum, but we can absolutely modify this to your needs. So I'm going to go here and really quickly type in my my server address, which I've got written down, my port number, my queue name will have an income cube, and finally we're going to have just this default view. Maybe even before I start pulling data in, why don't I start with like a 10,000 foot view of roughly what we're going to be building today. You'll notice that we've got kind of 4 different steps. One is we're going to begin by accessing our data. This is going to be income and expense data that's going to be coming from Planning Analytics. 2 is we're going to do some basic preparation. And by prep here, really, I mean we're just going to select and deselect the columns that we need or don't need. Here's where we're going to do a bit more of this processing. So let's take this data, let's clean it up, let's pivot it and summarize it in a way where we can actually do something useful with it. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to create a prediction with it. So a completely code-free time series predictive model is going to be pumped out. It'll just take a couple minutes once we get there. And then we're going to push this data out into Planning Analytics. So again, we're going to ingest, we're going to do some prep, we're going to forecast, and then we're going to push it out. This is what we're building toward, and we'll try to get through as much of it in 20 to 25 minutes or so. So really the purpose of this session is going to be just so you get an idea of the art of the possible. It won't be as much let's do a one-on-one on every single tool one at a time, because, well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we've only got another 45 minutes here today. So I've got this here. This is the first tool I've dragged out. I put my information in, and if I press the run button, we will give it just 1 second to actually call the API. You'll notice that I see here the information is loading, and in just a second here, I am going to have my data coming out of Planning Analytics and into Alteryx ultimately on my local machine here. While we're waiting for this to load, are there any questions?
Yes.
Aleks, it's Brian. There is one question here.
Yes, there is a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Sure. So the question is, where can they find the IBM PA input tool? Can you talk a little bit about where that came from?
Yeah, absolutely. So the tool itself isn't one that kind of existed by default. It's actually one that I made for the purpose of this demonstration. If it's a topic we want to get into more kind of offline, I'm happy to. It's more of a tool one topic. It's called macros. The idea being that we can actually take some tools, one of them, being a bit of code to make an API call, putting those together and actually packaging them up in our own tool. So this is actually a tool I made myself. It's one that I'm happy to share. Again, it's all open source code, and that exists here in these macros. As you can see, I've actually got a bunch here that I've created myself. And you can actually use these. They're kind of custom made. Again, without going too far into the details, just because I want to be cautious of time, it's something we created ourselves, but are happy to share as needed.
Aleks, is this something that we could share with the follow-up for it? So for folks
Absolutely.
who already have both of them, they can easily get going? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. For sure.
That's the one
That's all
question
for
for
the
now, so you can
questions.
continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So as you can see in our results window down here at the bottom, we can see the 148 records that came in. So for every single month, we've got a customer name, we've got an account name, we've got some sales tax percentage, we've got a bunch of income information. We won't need all this. I want to trim things down just so we're running a bit leaner. But the one thing that I do want to do is with my income data, I also want to have some corresponding expense data. You'll notice that I just kind of copied and pasted this tool just to speed things up a bit. What I'm going to do is make another call to the API, and this one is going to be to my expenses cube, right? So again, I'm not writing any code. I've kind of set this tool up once, and now I'm entering my own parameters that I want. Again, we can add username and password here for credentials. That's not an issue. And what I'm going to do here, this is going to speed things up slightly. I'm going to right click these, and I'm actually going to cache the data and then run the workflow. This is subtle. It's not something I really talk about too much in 101 sessions, but the idea is every time I hit this run button up here to get this workflow running, we're going to be calling that source of data again. If we can store it here in memory, that means that every time I run it, I'm not going to be sitting here and we're not going to be waiting for the data to load as we continue through the rest of the session. So it'll just help speed things up a bit by kind of leaving the data in here in memory, and then we can proceed with kind of building the rest of the workflow a bit faster. So that's what I've done here, just to resave that data locally. And as you can see here, if I click on my expense data, I've got similar idea. I've got a month, I've got a supplier, I've got an account number, and a whole bunch of additional information here. Some of this information I want, some of it I don't want. And one kind of section of this of the platform you're going to notice me using a lot here is going to be this tab right over here, this favorites tab in the tool palette, because there's a lot of stuff here that's going to help us get 80% of the way there. And one tool that we're going to use a lot of is going to be the select tool. As the name suggests, the tool will help us either select or deselect certain columns. So why is this actually important? It's like, cool, so I can do that in Excel. I can hide a column. I can unhide it. What I will say is the following, is that at every step along the way as we're going, you're going to see documentation. Like, in fact, this is a visualized documentation of our process. We can go back at any step of the way and really notice what happened to our data. So I don't have these hidden columns, or say I didn't notice that I'm skipping from column I to column L and not really understanding where these references to certain columns are coming from. So with that said, kind of within this tool, I only want to grab a few items here. I'm only going to grab the month. I'm going to grab the payment amount, and I got a couple more written down here. I wanted, I think, the key, the flag, and the description. So really only selecting a few here. You'll see a couple other items here, like changing of variable types. We'll talk about that in a bit. Not as pertinent to today's session. And also the ability to rename columns. So we actually will look at that very briefly when I pull down this other select tool. And here I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to deselect all these columns and really just grab the ones I want. I only want the month. I want the description. I think this tax inclusive amount, this flag, and I think in the other table we called it key instead of expense key. So maybe I'll just rename this to be key. And so again, this actually gives us some documentation. We can see here that this has been renamed to key from this original name right over here. Again, there's sort of traceability in terms of everything we've done. Even as I go, I can do things like add documentation or annotation to what I've done and say select/rename columns. And so what happens is, a month back, when I look back at the process I built and I'm like, wait, who built this? It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh snap, it was me who built it. I've left some annotation so I didn't completely forget what my logic was for everything I've done. How are we tracking so far? Any questions? Or are we good to keep going? I know I'm going through it a bit quickly here. Cool. We've got our two different tables of data here, and when I rerun it, you'll notice that we're actually going to be able to follow how the data flows from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and so forth. You'll notice down in the results window, that's how this data continues to change. So I've got two tables here, and each of these tables exists separately. I'm looking to have one common source of truth where I've got something that almost looks like an income statement, if you will, with just one line at a time of each one of these line items living in one single table. For those of you familiar with SQL, you'll know this is a union call. For those not, I kind of like to think of this more as stacking two tables. I want to stack one table on top of another. And so for something like that, I've got, again, this union tool that I can pull down, and when I drop it on the canvas, you'll notice that, again, very visually, I can see how my connections are flowing from one tool to the next. If I want to configure this on the left-hand side, I've got options. Again, I'm not going to go through this in depth, but by default, this is just going to auto-config every column by name. So what does that mean? If I've got a few really big tables and I want to figure out, how they should stack one on top of the other, it'll actually automatically read out the column names and then stack them appropriately so the data is properly aligned. We can have some customization. We can change it to be manual, and we can tweak it as needed. But an incredibly useful feature to, again, really show us how our data transforms one step at a time. So I'm going to say here, we're going to stack the income and expense data. Again, just going to leave some annotation so that we kind of know what we're looking at as we're going through here. And with this, we've now got one big table of 473 records. We've got a whole bunch of incomes here. We can see with that flag column, and we got a whole bunch of expenses. So what is it like? What's our ultimate goal? We said at the beginning we're going to build some sort of predictive model, and what we're going to build, just for simplicity's sake today, is going to be a bit of it's just going to be a prediction on income. So we've got a whole bunch of months worth of income here, some sort of payment amounts. We want to get the data prepared in a way such that once again, as new data comes in here in the future, we want to make sure that our process is set so that we're automatically going to pull that data through and push it straight into the model that we are looking to build. One of the ways that we can do that is to grab the summarize tool. And the summarize tool, I want you to really think about it as being kind of the equivalent of like a pivot table in Excel. So what the pivot table does is it grabs your raw data, and then it allows you to slice and dice it in kind of a summarized view. And really, we're doing nothing different here, except I'd argue it's a heck of a lot easier to do here. Part of the reason I'd argue that is because really we can start by saying, how do we want to group this data, and then what do we want the rest of the parameters to be? Ultimately, in the end, I'm interested in my income data. I'm interested in how it breaks down on a monthly basis, and I want it summarized as such. And the way I want it summarized is I want to see that for every transaction, so for every single line of income I have in a certain month, I want all of that to sum up to one single month's view. So month 1, it's X dollars in income. Month 2 is Y dollars in income, and so on and so on and so forth. So if I want to group this by, again, I think flag was my grouping here. So flag really is just an identifier, as you can see here, for income or expense. I'll say I want to group by that. I also want to group by the month. So I want the month to be one of my major groups. And then finally, this payment amount, that's the numeric value that we've got. I'm going to want to do a sum of that data. I'm going to want to know for every single line of income or expense for every single month, what is the total dollar amount going to be for that row. And when I press run, again, I'm going to get a table that summarizes that for me. And it's in a bit of a different order, which is fine. We see some empties here in the expenses, which is okay. We'll take care of that. We're really just interested in the income. But the idea is we've created a summarized table that really just gives us that one final view that we want, that we're ultimately going to be building a model off of. And the one thing I want to highlight before I pause up for questions again is the fact that we've got, this has been built once. You set it and forget it. Every time, once I uncache this, every time I'm hitting my API, I'm hitting my backend, I'm hitting my files, no matter what happens, I'm going to get that same data. It's going to flow through, and we're going to clean it all up and push it straight into the model. Any questions so far? We're going to wrap up in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Perfect. Perfect. Said I'm interested only in income. So I've got a filter tool, right? Think about when you're filtering your data in Excel. You have a filter that you select, and really here we can formulaically do it. So we can get quite clever with how complex we're getting. We got a whole set of formulas here, but really in our case it's going to be a basic filter where I'm saying that I want my flag to equal I being income, so that when I run this, what we're going to see coming out of one of these, as we call output anchors, is going to be exclusively income data. Notice how I've got it all written out here. It's just income data. Whereas out of my other output, I've got everything that did not fit the filter. Reason I'm highlighting this is if you contrast this to how things typically work in say Excel, I can only filter for one view at a time. I never lose the view of my data here. I can continue to run one stream of analysis this way and one stream of analysis that way as well. One thing I don't like here, I don't like that this data is not sorted. I'd like to have it sorted by month ideally. So what I'm going to do is I'll actually grab my sort tool. And if by the way, the search bar is super handy. If I say, for example, let's go ahead and sort, it actually intelligently kind of pulls up and suggests tools for me. Within the sort tool, I'm going to say I want to grab, say, month, and I want to sort in ascending order. And once I run this, we're going to see that the data has come out sorted from January 2009 all the way down through, I guess this is April of 2021.
Aleks, we had a question that just came in asking if there's any performance considerations while doing this.
Yeah, there absolutely are. So one performance consideration was, for instance, the fact that I cached this data so that we're not actually hitting the database, the API endpoint, or the files directly. That's one way to do it. Another is if you're working with databases, we do have in-database capabilities such that a majority of these calculations can actually occur in the source database and not on my little dingy 4 GB RAM laptop. This could be a 10x improver. So I've seen processes go from 10 hours to sub 1 hour. When you're leveraging in database as well, kind of the highest job that I've seen or highest workflow has been around 5.7 billion rows of data, so far beyond the 1,048,576 in Excel, or anything after 30 megabytes when your computer starts to crash because there's too much. Really the sky's the limit here. You're only limited to the power on your machine, or beyond that, the power of the server or the database if you can directly connect to that.
Perfect, thanks.
My pleasure. So I've got about 5 minutes left, so we're in the final stretch. We're now ready to build our predictive model. The one we're going to build is a time series model. For those of you super into statistical modeling, we've got ARIMA and ETS models that we support. I'm going to pick ARIMA for today, in part because I know this data doesn't have seasonality. If you're not sure, in a 2-1 session, we can absolutely build both and do an automated comparison, which is absolutely within the realm of possibility. But I want to show you how easy it is to actually build a model here. All I need to do is really set a model name. So I'll call this my ARIMA model, and I'll select the field that I want to forecast. And in our case, it's this sum payment amount. I also finally need to tell it what my frequency is of my data. We've got monthly data, so I'm going to leave it checked as monthly. If you had weekly, daily, hourly, you would select appropriately. And that's it. What's going to come outputting out of this is actually an outputted model. When we get that model, and I'll show it in a second, we're going to need to feed it into a tool which will spit out what the final forecast is going to be. That tool is called the TS forecast tool. Think about like a scoring tool. Think about a tool that only it'll take in a model, and it will, once it takes it in, it'll just spit out a prediction. And in our case, I think we'll look ahead about 12 periods was the number that seemed appropriate. You can play around with this. You can try to forecast more. You can try to forecast for less. But the idea being now that when I run this, the output that we're going to get out of this piece right over here, and this model we built in just a couple of minutes, will be the forecasted amount for the next 12 months. Once that's done, our final step is just to push this back into Planning Analytics, and then we'll see on Brian's screen what that looks like. Waiting another few seconds for the machine to think here. Any other questions that have come up in the meantime?
No, all clear for now.
Right on. So as we wait for this to load, the way we built these models. For those interested, this is all it's out in the open. I can actually open this up. This is a broader tool that shows the actual code. It's built in R for those who are curious. And you can see the actual code that was put in to build this. We just put it in a super easy to use fashion. And as you'll see right over here, I've got my period and sub here. We're going to clean this up in a second. But really over here, this is my forecasted amount. I can see this is the prediction that I'm going to get for all my subsequent 12 months that were made here. I didn't write a single line of code to get this. These items over here, if we want to show a range at like a 95% and 80% confidence interval, again, just because I know we're tight on time, we're not going to get into all this, but this is just kind of a high level of what we can and can't do. And then finally, like we built in IBM kind of planning analytics input tool, we've also got this handy output tool, which we put together. Similar idea. I'm going to say my server address is services US Central. There we go. This is going to go into my summary cube. And finally, my elements that I had here, I think were month and income. So I can specify my elements here. Again, we can do more customization on this. I know time is of the essence, so I'm not getting too deep into this piece. But this is all customizable. It's all stuff that we can share. Nothing really proprietary here. So we're giving this a second to run. But really, the idea being here, once it's done in about the next 30 seconds or so, we're going to toss it back off to Brian, who will show us the final item. So I know that was quick. That was Alteryx in about 23 minutes or 24 minutes, which is definitely a bit of a speed run. But I hope that it gave you a good high level idea of, hey, like I can do things like ingest my data, I can transform it, and I can make predictive models with it without writing a single line of code. The thing that I want to stress, like once and for all, one final time, is like, now that I built this process out, I don't need to build it again. I'm now pointing at IBM Planning Analytics. I'm pointing at my SQL database. I'm pointing at my shared network file, whatever it is that my input is. Since I'm pointing at it, every time I get new data come in, well, once I press the run button, guess what? That data is going to flow through this process, and it will repeat the same process over and over and over and over again. We do not need to sit down and build our weekly, monthly, quarterly reports by hand ever again. That's my spiel. This is the data that's up from, as I promised, May 2021 until next 12 months, April 2022. These are the forecasted amounts. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think at this point we'll hand it off back to Brian, who's going to show us that it worked, hopefully. Thank you, everyone.
It did in fact work. I was watching very carefully to make sure I received data.
Good.
So let's take a look. Previously, we had no data in 2022 and only half of 2021. So if I expand this, we can see data in there. I'm actually going to hit the refresh button on the whole dashboard. Pay close attention to this flat line over here. You're going to see the line pop out, and we now have data. So this data has come back in just as soon as Aleks ran that model and has loaded itself into my little cube automatically. All I needed to do was hit refresh on the dashboard, and there we go. We've got our data. Pretty cool. So hopefully you guys see the power and the value of that. I'm going to turn it over to Doyle Bond from JD Irving, who's going to walk you through a real-life example of connecting Alteryx and Planning Analytics. Over to you, Doyle.
Perfect. Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'm going to switch the slide here. Everybody sees the screen. I'm moving it. Are you seeing it on the screen?
I'm not seeing it move. Are you on? Move one more slide. Let's see if it moves.
Wait a second. Is this what you're seeing now?
Oh, now we're good.
All right, perfect. Okay, thank you. A little delay. All right, so thank you for inviting me to speak today. So I actually have two use cases I wanted to share of how we're leveraging Planning Analytics and Alteryx together. And this is definitely a team effort. So all the cases we're showing today is it's a good example of how we're integrating our finance team with the operations and our business partners in JDI IT division as well. So it's a strong team coming together to deliver these examples that I'm demonstrating today. So just a quick, apologize. So about myself, so my name's Doyle Bond. I've been with JDI for 9 years now. I have 13 years of experience in financial planning and analysis, and I've been using Planning Analytics now for 7 years, all that with JD Irving. So my role in this organization right now is to develop financial planning analysis models, to do predictive and forecasting reporting for the different finance teams across our organization. So finance transformation at JD Irving. So really what we do is our role is to enable finance across the organization to deliver value to our business partners. So really overall, like, we have a list of things we do and the tools we support, but really our goal is to make things easier, better, and faster for our business partners. And my role in this department is to manage the planning analytics rollouts for our different finance teams. So JD Irving, for those who may not be familiar with our company, JD Irving was founded in 1882 in New Brunswick, Canada. To date, we have over 18,000 employees. And since 1882, our company has grown to deliver services and different products across many different industries, such as agriculture, construction equipment, consumer products, food manufacturing, our forestry and forestry products, retail and distribution, shipbuilding, and transportation and logistics. And then our operations can be found in both Canada and US. So that can be from Newfoundland all the way to Lethbridge, Alberta, and Maine down to Macron, Georgia. So let's have a slide here. Just really show the analytics maturity. So this is the maturity curve that we're using here in finance to really show kind of like our degree of intelligence when it comes to leveraging data better and to give us better insights into the financial data to drive better decision making. So really showing that how we increase our capabilities, we're going to increase our competitive advantage for our organization, where not every business case that we're trying to solve needs predictive forecasting. There is always a use case and the right point. So there's optimal value in certain points. But really, we're always trying to make sure we're leveraging the right tools and bringing in our different business partners in the organization and IT to help us deliver the right solution to our business partners. So I have two examples, and they're both with our woodlands and our forestry division. One is about using Alteryx to pull data in to optimize our forecast, and the other one is a smaller example, but showing how we're using Alteryx to push data out to share that information to non-planning analytics users. So in our woodlands division, we have many different departments spread out. So we have foresters in the woods on tablets, planning in the woods, and that information is being sent read-write to an information warehouse. So this was set up with the operations and our IT division to create this better way of being able to communicate information to and from head office. And what this did was it unlocked real good value for finance. So what we were able to do was use Alteryx to tap into this information systems and pull in live. We say live daily, so we can pull in every morning. We're pulling in information that's being submitted from across New Brunswick and Maine of different plans that we're doing in our forestry division, and we're able to pull that into a woodlands planning analytics TM1 model, and that live information is being fed into a TM1 model that used to be manual key inputs, and it's allowing us to reduce the cycle time to produce a new forecast. And really, it's like, what does that mean for us? It really gave us better and timely data to and from those in the field, but it also reduced our cycle time to produce an updated financial forecast from 2 days to 15 minutes. So Alteryx really optimized that by really allowing us to tap into this new set of information that the business and IT made available. And by working together, we were able to feed all that information live into TM1 on a daily basis and allow us to do better data optimization, and then really for us to do better scenario planning. So that allows us to do better what if, so we can kind of see like the sensitivity of certain things happening in the industry or in the organization, or maybe different things we want to do in the future. How does that impact our business? And this really revolutionized how they do their planning in the woodlands area. So in our woodlands division, it used to be a large team, very manual, and now it's a leaner team doing a lot more faster. Any questions on that one?
Doesn't look like any questions yet.
Perfect. Okay. And then this one about sharing insights. So we have our planning analytics model, and one of the biggest barriers of entry for planning analytics is the cost of licensing and sharing that out there. So what we want to do is make this financial information and the insights that are coming out of it more readily accessible to non-planning analytics users, because in planning analytics, you also have to train all your users how to consume things correctly. So we have a TI so Turbo Integrator process pushing data out of planning analytics to a secure network folder. And then we're using Alteryx to package that information up, clean it, and organize it, and then send that to Tableau dashboards, different information screens, or just packaging it up in different reports to make it consumable by different stakeholders. So really, the data is now available to non-planning analytics users. So Tableau dashboards, info boards, executive portals. The data is automated, so all of this information is pulled out on daily schedules, but also has the availability for ad hoc runs. And then it's allowing us to make better business decision making. So in order for us to accomplish those, we had some key success factors that made us able to deliver this. There's a lot of work that went into it on either the front end or the back end of different projects and different teams. But the first one was, we had a clear vision on our purpose. So we really started asking, why are we trying to do this job? What is the problem we're trying to solve? And it really became our North Star in any project that we try to take on. These two projects, we had a fully engaged team of different stakeholders. So that would be our operations, our business partners in IT, and then finance. And the different, that would be either our shared services, accounting department, or finance transformation. And then we're always continuously optimizing our models. So we're always trying to innovate past our original goal. So the Woodlands model that I was mentioning earlier was at first just a standard TM1 model where they had inputs coming in to have a financial forecast coming out in financial statements. But then when that information system became available, it unlocked new opportunity. And we were able to say, okay, based off of where we were, we can now start innovating past that original goal and driving more value out of this tool and moving the organization further ahead. And really, I want to just show those two stories. It really shows, I really liked the demo earlier on the REST API. Right now we're using Turbo Integrated processes to push things to CSV file using Alteryx to grab that. Being able to automate that even further seems really interesting. I'd like to look into that further. But I would say we were able to get really good value out of a simple process, which is just the input and output functions of Alteryx, and be able to combine that with Planning Analytics. Planning Analytics really allows us to pull in more information than just our ERP financial information by layering in operational stats and other metrics that are important to the business. We're able to enrich our forecast to add more value to ultimately our executive team and those who are making the business decisions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Doyle. Perfect. Okay. So are there any other questions? Actually, what there is one that we have not gotten to yet is about, oh, never mind. Aleks did respond to it directly in the chat about the question. So if anybody has a question, are there any tools that measure the accuracy of predictive model? That is answered within the chat. If you do have any questions right now for anybody on the team, including Doyle, let us know and we'll address those. I should have a couple more things to go over. There we go. So we're messing with Alex's marketing system, how we're presenting this. So if you would like an Alteryx trial, let us know. If you're looking for any help building out any workflows or integrating Planning Analytics and Alteryx together, have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. We'll be sending you an email with all the content from today. If you think of any questions later on, honestly, door's always open. Feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, Doyle, Brian, and Aleks for presenting today. It was fantastic to be able to hear a real life example, and I think some wheels might be turning with some folks on the line who either own one, both, or either of the technologies today. So really appreciate the time. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and you'll be seeing a follow-up note from us. Oh, we might have one more. Oh, is this session recorded? Yes, it is. So we'll be sending over a recording of the session. So you're welcome to rewatch or share it around. We post it onto our YouTube channel. Perfect. And I think that's it for today. I really appreciate everybody joining us today. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Bye now.
Thank you.